What do you do when silence is the only thing keeping you safe, but also the very thing that's killing you? Emily had always been the kind of woman who noticed everything and said very little. It wasn't because she didn't have thoughts, feelings, or opinions. No, she had too many of those. But life had taught her early on that the world rarely listened to women like her, quiet, observant, and not born into privilege. She had grown used to hiding herself. Like wallpaper in a room filled with noise, she blended in. She smiled when she was supposed to, nodded when expected. And when they told her, "Don't talk about this," she obeyed, even though her hands trembled and her soul itched to scream. It started with something small. Or at least, that's what they told her. "This isn't your place," her boss had whispered that day in the hallway. "You're new here. You don't want to cause trouble." The words were soft, but their meaning struck hard. It wasn't advice. It was a warning. And so, Emily kept quiet. But silence has a sound. A loud, echoing, relentless sound that lives in your chest. At night, when the world went still, she could hear it. The guilt, the confusion, the truth. Something had happened. Something she saw. Something no one wanted to admit. Emily hadn't meant to walk in on it. She was just dropping off a folder, like she'd done 100 times before. But that afternoon, the door hadn't closed all the way. She heard voices, saw shadows moving. And when she stepped closer, just close enough to hear what was really being said, she knew instantly. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a harmless joke or a clumsy mistake. This was wrong. And they saw her see it. Her name wasn't mentioned aloud, but the next day, her desk was moved. The friendly nods stopped. The weekly meetings she was once invited to? Cancelled. No explanations. Just cold eyes and tight smiles. Then came the warning. "Emily, some things are bigger than you. This is a professional environment. If you want to succeed here, you'll need to learn discretion." She remembered that word clearly. Discretion. A polished corporate way of saying, "Shut up." And for weeks, she did. She told no one. Not her roommate, not her mother, not even her reflection. She tried to bury it like a bad dream, convince herself she'd misunderstood. But the way they looked at her, the way they watched her, followed her movements with tense glances, it told her everything she needed to know. She was a threat. Not because of what she'd done, but because of what she knew. Still, Emily stayed quiet. Until the day it all came crashing down. One email. One leak. One anonymous message that exposed everything. She hadn't sent it, but they thought she had. And when the truth finally exploded, when the names were revealed, the files discovered, and the media came knocking, everyone turned to her. Even those who had once pretended she didn't exist. They were shocked, not just by what happened, but by the fact that Emily, the quiet one, had been in the middle of it all. What they didn't know, though, was that Emily had a truth of her own, and she wasn't going to stay silent anymore. Emily Grace Mitchell wasn't born brave. At least, not in the way people usually define bravery: loud, defiant, ready to take on the world. No. Emily's courage had always been quiet. The kind you don't notice until it's the only thing left holding you together. She grew up in a small town just outside of Seattle, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts as a night nurse. Her father had left when Emily was 6. No explanation, no goodbye, just a note on the kitchen counter that read, "I can't do this anymore." From that day forward, Emily learned 2 things. People don't always mean what they say, and silence can be both a shield and a prison. Her mother, Claire, never really talked about the abandonment. She poured her energy into work, bills, and keeping a roof over their heads. Emily often felt invisible, like she had to earn the right to be noticed. She became an expert at staying out of trouble, pleasing teachers, getting good grades, and smiling even when she didn't feel like it. By the time she reached high school, Emily had mastered the art of being fine. She was the kind of girl who helped others with their homework, but never talked about her own problems. The one who gave advice, she never took herself. She learned early how to shrink herself to fit into the spaces people made for her. College was supposed to be her escape. And, in a way, it was. She studied communications, which ironically had little to do with speaking up. She wanted to help others tell their stories, even if she wasn't ready to tell her own. She was a brilliant student, insightful, hardworking, and driven. But still, she remained in the background, unnoticed in her own spotlight. After graduation, she landed an internship at a well-known media company in the city, Meridian and Fox Media Group. It was a dream opportunity. Fast-paced, competitive, filled with sharp suits and sharper tongues. Emily didn't mind starting from the bottom, printing scripts, organizing meetings, even making coffee runs for people who didn't know her name. She believed hard work would eventually speak for her. But in that office, silence wasn't just survival. It was expected. The culture was polished on the surface, diversity statements on the walls, HR seminars on ethics and inclusion. But behind closed doors, there were whispers. Favors exchanged in silence. Promotions that didn't quite add up. Meetings that only certain people were invited to. And eyes, always eyes watching, judging, calculating. Emily had a mentor during those early days, Amanda. Sharp, confident, respected. Amanda took a liking to her, taught her the ropes, gave her advice. But even Amanda, with all her power, had moments where her eyes would cloud over. "Don't ask too many questions, Emily," she warned once, almost in passing. "This place eats truth-tellers alive." Emily had laughed nervously, thinking it was just a figure of speech. It wasn't. Over time, she noticed things, strange calendar invites disappearing, whispered conversations that stopped the moment she entered a room, colleagues who left suddenly without explanation. There was a story behind every closed door, but no one ever talked. And then came the moment that changed everything. The afternoon she walked into the wrong room at the wrong time and saw something she was never supposed to see. Her heart had pounded so loudly, she thought it might give her away. She didn't make a sound. She just backed out slowly, closed the door, and tried to breathe. The next day, her access to files was limited. She was pulled from a project she'd worked on for months.
And her mentor?
Amanda wouldn't even look her in the eye. Emily knew what was happening. She was being erased, softly, quietly, systematically.
But why?
She hadn't said a word. She hadn't told anyone. Not her roommate Olivia, who always tried to get her to talk about work. Not her best friend Rachel, who'd known her since college. Not even her mother, who called every Sunday asking the same hopeful question, "Are you okay, honey?" And Emily always said yes. Because that's what she'd been taught. To be okay, even when she wasn't. But something inside her had started to crack. The weight of what she knew pressed on her chest like a brick that grew heavier each day. She started having trouble sleeping. Her hands trembled when she typed. She flinched when someone said her name too loudly. Still, she stayed. Because walking away would mean letting them win. And staying silent, that was the only thing keeping her in the building. Until the leak happened. Until someone somewhere, someone who didn't stay silent, exposed what was going on inside Meridian and Fox. And suddenly, everything changed. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, legal teams, people from departments she didn't even know existed. All of them wanted to know what Emily knew. She wasn't the whistleblower. But now everyone thought she was. And for the first time in her life, Emily wasn't sure if she should deny it or finally speak the truth. Because maybe, just maybe, this was the moment she had been made for. The walls felt tighter now. After the leak, the once silent office of Meridian and Fox became a pressure cooker. Whispers filled the hallways like smoke, toxic, choking, impossible to avoid. People started avoiding each other's eyes. Doors that once stayed open now slammed shut. Emily could feel the tension ripple through every step she took. And even though no one said it outright, she knew what they were thinking. It was her. She had become the nucleus of suspicion. The air changed around her. Conversation stopped when she entered the break room. Her emails, once casually filled with updates and banter, became cold and curt. People who had once smiled politely now only glanced at her with narrowed eyes, as if trying to read her mind. She tried to carry on, to keep her head down, act normal, do her job. But nothing was normal anymore. The morning after the leak, she was summoned to HR. Not with a warning.
Not even an official request.
Just a sticky note left on her keyboard. Meeting. 9:30, 12th floor. As she stepped into the elevator, her stomach churned. The ride felt slower than usual, like the building itself didn't want her to go up there. The 12th floor was silent, too silent. Clean, clinical glass walls and artificial smiles. Waiting inside the room were two people she barely recognized. A compliance officer and an external legal consultant. They offered her water. She declined. Then came the questions. Do you know anything about the documents that were released? Have you ever accessed confidential HR records? Were you aware of any misconduct within the company? Emily answered carefully, truthfully. No, I didn't send anything. No, I didn't take part. Yes, I saw something, but I wasn't sure what it meant at the time. The man with the slicked back hair gave a small smile. Too polished. Too rehearsed. Sometimes people witness things and don't understand the full weight of what they saw. Sometimes they think they're doing the right thing by speaking up. Sometimes he leaned forward. They regret it.
Her throat went dry.
The message was clear. This wasn't just a conversation. It was a warning again. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that room again. The flickering projector. The voices she wasn't supposed to hear. The files open on that screen. The fear in Amanda's eyes when their gazes met across the hallway the next morning. What was in those documents? She had only caught fragments, names, numbers, transactions, but it was enough to know something dark was buried under the surface. And now, someone had unearthed it. Emily began noticing more than just silence. Her keycard access became unreliable. She was locked out of folders she used to manage. Tasks were quietly reassigned to others. And then, one morning, she found a note in her drawer. Just 5 words. Stop digging or you'll drown. There was no name. No handwriting. Just the message on plain white paper, folded neatly like it had been waiting there for days. Panic gripped her. She ran to the bathroom and locked herself in a stall. Her hands shook as she read the note over and over. Was it a threat? A warning? A test?
She thought of Amanda again.
Her once bold mentor, now quiet as a shadow. Emily hadn't spoken to her since the leak. But something inside her snapped that day. She marched to Amanda's office. The door was half open. Amanda was inside, sitting with her back to the door, staring out the window. Amanda, Emily said quietly. Amanda turned, startled. Her face was pale, hollow. I didn't leak anything, Emily said. Amanda just nodded. I know. You do? Emily asked, confused. Amanda hesitated. Because I did. Silence crashed between them. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. Amanda stood slowly, walked to the door, and closed it. I thought they would bury it. I thought no one would believe me. But when I saw you that day, I knew you had seen enough. And I couldn't let you carry it alone. Emily's mind reeled. You sent the documents, she whispered. Amanda nodded. But why? Emily asked. Amanda's voice broke. Because it's been happening for years. Falsified financials. Forced resignations. Harassment swept under the rug. I saw too much. And when they came after you, I realized I couldn't be silent anymore. Emily felt a mix of awe and fear. They think I did it. Amanda's eyes softened. I know. That's how they work. Isolate. Intimidate. Break you down until you question your own truth. I'm scared, Emily admitted. So was I, Amanda replied. But you're stronger than you know. That conversation became the turning point. The next week, an internal investigation was officially launched. But it wasn't justice, it was damage control. The company hired a PR firm. A few executives were put on temporary leave. Meanwhile, the real whistleblower was still in hiding, and Emily remained the scapegoat. But the tide was shifting. A journalist named Kara Daniels reached out to her. Not through email, but by slipping a handwritten note into her jacket pocket while she was getting coffee. You don't have to stay quiet anymore, it said. They only win if you let them. Emily met Kara in secret. They talked for hours. Emily didn't name names, but she confirmed details that only someone on the inside could know. She didn't betray Amanda, but she did share her own truth. What she saw, what she heard, how she was treated. And when Kara published the story, it hit harder than anyone expected. The article went viral. The Inside Whisper: How One Woman's Silence Hid a Company's Darkest Secrets. Emily's name wasn't in it, but her story was. And people began connecting the dots. Employees from other departments started speaking up. Anonymous tips poured into HR. Lawsuits were filed. Sponsors pulled out.
Board members resigned.
The storm had finally begun. But so had the danger. Emily started receiving strange phone calls, no voice, just silence. Her apartment buzzer rang at odd hours. Her tires were slashed one morning. The message was clear: she was rattling the wrong cages. She filed a police report, but there was only so much they could do without proof. She knew what was happening. They couldn't discredit the article, so they were trying to break her. But Emily had changed. She wasn't the wallpaper girl anymore. The fear was still there, yes. But so was something stronger: resolve. They had tried to erase her. Now, she was writing herself back into the story. It all came to a head on a gray Monday morning. Emily woke up before her alarm. Sleep had become a rare luxury, interrupted by anxiety, phone vibrations, dreams that turned into restless pacing. But that morning was different. There was no fear in her chest. Just clarity. Clarity that she wasn't going to run anymore.
Not from them.
Not from what she saw. Not even from herself. She put on the black blazer she'd worn on her first day at Meridian and Fox. Not because she wanted to impress anyone, but because it reminded her of who she had been back then. Hopeful. Quiet. Invisible. Today, she wasn't invisible. As she walked into the office, people looked up from their desks. Some looked away. Others stared. The rumors were thick now. Her name was whispered in corners, her image circled in internal chats, even though no one said it out loud. Amanda had disappeared. On sabbatical, they said. But Emily knew better. She walked to her desk, sat down, and opened her laptop. A pop-up notification blinked at her, an invitation to a meeting. Conference room 14B. 10 a.m. No subject. No sender. Emily knew what this was. It was time. She could ignore it, pretend she didn't see it. But then again, she'd spent years pretending. Pretending not to notice the discomfort in her gut, the quiet injustices, the voices that trembled just before they were silenced. No more pretending. At 9:58, she stood up and walked. Room 14B was tucked in a quiet corner of the floor, usually used for private meetings or disciplinary conversations. Emily paused outside the door, breathed in, and pushed it open. Inside were 5 people, all senior-level executives, including the chief legal officer, the new head of HR, and the same compliance officer who'd smiled too politely weeks ago. Their faces were unreadable. "Emily," the CLO said, gesturing to a seat. She sat without a word. "We asked you here to clarify a few matters," he began. "There's been an influx of media coverage, a series of internal reports, and anonymous statements, all which point to breaches of confidentiality and serious allegations regarding our company's internal practices." Emily met his eyes. "So, you want to know what I've said?" He gave a slight smile. "We're simply seeking transparency." She tilted her head. "That's ironic, coming from you." A pause. Tension crackled like electricity. "We have no evidence that directly links you to any external leaks," he continued. "But we do have the authority to take disciplinary action if we believe your actions have compromised the company's interests." Emily's voice was steady. "What about the company compromising its people?" Silence. "Let me be clear," she said. "I didn't send the files. But I saw them. I saw what was in them. I saw people get pushed out. I saw abuse ignored. I saw you silence anyone who raised their voice." "You're making serious accusations, Miss Mitchell," another man chimed in. Emily nodded. "I am. And if you want to fire me, do it. But know this. I'm not afraid of losing this job. I'm afraid of waking up 10 years from now wondering why I stayed quiet when I had the chance to do something." No one spoke for a moment. Then, quietly, the legal officer said, "This meeting is over." Emily stood, heart pounding. But it wasn't fear. It was power. Real, earned, undeniable power. She walked out, straight-backed, chin high. And the hallway didn't feel as heavy anymore. That afternoon, Emily received an unexpected call. It was Amanda. "Are you okay?" Amanda asked. "I'm still standing," Emily replied. Amanda sighed. "I've left the country for now. But I want you to know what you did. Speaking up, even in the face of everything, it made a difference." "I wasn't brave," Emily admitted. "I was just tired of pretending." Amanda was quiet for a moment. "That is bravery, Emily. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." They talked for nearly an hour about the company, the people still trapped inside, and the journalists who had started circling like hawks. Amanda revealed that more documents were on the way. The story wasn't finished. And Emily would have a choice to make. That evening, Emily received an email from Kara Daniels, the journalist. The subject line read, "Let's talk again." They met in a quiet cafe outside the city. Kara looked energized, her notebook already out. "You don't need to go on record," she said, "but what you say could help protect others who haven't been heard yet." Emily hesitated. Then she began to speak. She told Kara everything, not just about the files, but the culture, the silencing, the manipulation, the way fear was used as a leash, the way silence was traded like currency. And Kara listened, word for word. No judgment, just truth. When the second story broke, it hit harder than the first. This time there were names, testimonies, data. And while Emily's name still wasn't printed, everyone knew. She had become something else now, a symbol, not of scandal, but of courage. People started reaching out to her, former employees, current staff, even strangers. Messages poured into her inbox. "You helped me speak up. I thought I was alone. Thank you for showing me I'm not crazy." Emily cried reading those messages. Because for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone either. Weeks later, she handed in her resignation. Not out of defeat, but because she was done shrinking herself to fit into a place that never deserved her voice. She accepted an offer from an independent media watchdog organization, a place where truth wasn't punished but pursued. On her last day at Meridian and Fox, she packed her things slowly, intentionally. She looked around at the gray walls, the glass doors, the unspoken rules. And then she walked out, not as a victim, but as a survivor. No applause. No cameras. Just a woman reclaiming her story. Outside, the sky had started to clear. Months passed. The scandal continued to unfold. More resignations. Government probes. A full-blown class action lawsuit. But Emily was no longer watching from the shadows. She gave speeches, wrote articles, mentored other whistleblowers. Her quiet courage became a torch others could follow. And yet, she remained humble. She didn't seek fame, just change. One evening, while walking home, she passed a group of college students handing out flyers about ethics and journalism. One of them turned to her and said, "You look familiar. Were you in the Meridian story?" Emily smiled softly. "Something like that." The student grinned. "That article changed my life. I want to do what you do one day." Emily's voice was steady, full of quiet strength. "You will. Just don't let them silence you." Sometimes, the loudest act of bravery is done in silence, in the quiet moments when no one is watching, when the easiest thing would be to look away, stay small, and survive. But Emily didn't choose survival. She chose truth. And that truth, as messy and uncomfortable as it was, became the seed of transformation. Not just for her life, but for everyone her voice reached. Her story reminds us of something deeply important, that there are moments in life when we're all told to keep quiet, to protect reputations, to preserve comfort, to uphold power that was never earned. But silence, when forced, is a kind of prison. And truth, when spoken, is a kind of freedom. If you've ever been made to feel like your truth doesn't matter, if you've ever been pressured to ignore what your heart knew was wrong, if you've ever feared the consequences of standing alone, remember Emily. Remember her courage, not because she shouted the truth from rooftops, but because she whispered it when her voice shook. Because she kept going when the path was darkest. Because she stayed true when everything around her demanded she break. So now, I ask you, what truth are you holding in your heart? What silence have you been told to keep? And when the time comes, because it always does, will you choose comfort or courage? Let Emily's story remind you that even the quietest voice can ignite a revolution, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is tell the truth.